It's an almost universal truth that we all wish we had more time, and most of us wish we were more organised. We are all gifted with 24 hours each day, but time is our one true non-renewable resource. The questions we raise today, are we just busy being busy, and are we working hard or are we working smart? In today's episode of The Leadership Project, I'm joined by productivity expert Donna McGeorge. Donna shares her insights about how to use the first 2 hours of your day to set yourself up for success, and how to intentionally architect your day and your week to get more from your time. And stay tuned to the end as Donna gives her tips on how ChatGPT will change the way we work and make us more inspired, creative, and productive. Sit back, learn a few things, and enjoy the show. Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Leadership Project. I'm greatly honoured today to be joined by Donna McGeorge. Donna is a renowned keynote speaker, facilitator, and coach, and she's the author of a series of books. It's about time. And of course, that's got a double meaning, but we're going to talk a lot about productivity today. The book series, covers things like having 25-minute meetings. Imagine that. About the first 2 hours and how critical they might be in your day, and about this thing called a one-day refund. I have no idea what that means. I'm really curious. I'm going to stay curious and find out. And she's also got a new book about ChatGPT, and I'm wondering where that might fit into our equation about productivity. So a lot about productivity today. I'm going to say personal productivity. I want to blend that into a bit of team productivity because we all work in broader teams as well. And it's time to really stop and think and reflect on how productive we are in the workplace and what can we do to get better. So without any further ado, Donna, I'd love to know a little bit about your background and what led to your obsession with productivity.
Hey, thanks for having me on your show, Mick. And I reckon it goes back to, I was raised in a Navy household. So both my parents were in the Navy. That's where they met. My mum had to leave once they got married. That's what she had to do in the olden days. My dad stayed in. And so we had that lifestyle of military precision, structure, order. I probably learned about punctuality from my dad. And then because we moved around a lot, I went to 9 schools in 9 years. And so I had to learn pretty quickly how to fit in, adapt, get stuff done, play catch-ups. And, I don't know whether you or any of your audience have ever been the new person at a school. Well, I actually think it made me a pretty easy target. And so I had to really adapt pretty quickly. And so that all kind of, at the time, didn't feel like much fun. But as I got older and started working, I realized that the skills that I developed were really awesome to have at work. And so I was the person that could always get things done between 9 to 5, no matter how much extra work was given, no matter how much my bosses thought I clearly didn't have enough to do. They'd give me more. I'd help out others. I still managed to do it with a smile on my face and within the hours. And so people then started asking me, how do you do that? And then eventually they said, you need to write books about this. And here we are.
There we go. And I'm glad that you have. And yeah, what a great story. Tell me, I'm curious on a couple of things there. Let's start with 9 schools in 9 years. What did you learn about yourself and about others?
Gosh, it's hard to say because it all started when I was pretty young. So probably what I learned about myself, all remembering happens in the present. So in hindsight, I know I learned resilience and, as I said, adaptability. At the time, I didn't realize how brave I was as a kid. So the ability to just be dropped at a new school and, my mum had 3 kids, at one point 3 kids under 5. So, and when dad was at sea, that meant she was like a single mum with 3 young kids. So some of those schools were, I'd go and stay with my aunt in Echuca. And so I went to Echuca South Primary School and Echuca East Primary School all in the 1 year because they moved house in that time. And so I think I was brave. I think I was, I tried not to make trouble because, again, we could take 10 years of therapy to probably unravel all of it. But, the oldest child, oldest daughter, really responsible, not wanting to rock the boat. So, yeah, probably learned to be a good girl amongst all of that as well.
So I am hearing a bit there about resilience for sure. I'm also hearing a lot about courage. And then about adaptability. Like, so you saying that you didn't want to make waves. The only way you can not make waves in a situation like that is to be able to, I'm going to say, read the room. How does that sit with you?
Thank you for saying that, because I'm also, in addition to writing books, I'm also a facilitator, and I've been told a lot that I'm very good at reading a room. No one's made that connection until now, Mick, so thank you for that. I suspect it's something I've just been either unconsciously learned or good at or whatever from a pretty young age. Yeah, how to read a room. Thanks for that.
No, that's what I picked up from what you said. So there we go. Now, I want to come back to that 9 to 5 thing you said. Now, I'm going to throw something out there. I'd love your expert opinion about this. And it's the whole thing about working hard versus working smart. And we put a lot of companies, I shouldn't say generally, a lot of companies really put people on a pedestal that are working hard. The 12-hour day, the 14-hour day. They kind of give this dichotomy because they say, oh, well, you need to look after yourself and you need to rest. But yet in the next breath, they're applauding the person that put in the 70-hour week. But I didn't hear that from you. I heard that in the hours between 9 and 5, you can flex up, down, whatever, to be able to get stuff done. What does the difference between working hard and working smart mean to you, Donna?
I think it's really being focused, so I still manage to have great relationships with people and have fun. And I've always been told I've got a great sense of humour, all that sort of stuff. So no one ever described me as being, that kind of hard-nosed and so focused that I was, not putting my head up from work. So I don't know why I need to explain that. I'm still a nice person, even though I've got a lot of stuff done. The working smart stuff for me, I think it is focus. I think it's identifying what needed to be done. And I think I've always kind of worked like I was going on annual leave tomorrow. So if we think about the most productive, I always think it's one of our most productive days of the year is the day before we're going on annual leave. And what we do is we get pretty cutthroat and brutal about the meetings that we go to, that what we prioritize, about what we think we can do later or what we put off until later. So I think I was just always naturally pretty good at that. And it never felt brutal or hard for me. It was just like, I'm really clear that I'm focused. I do not need to be involved in that. This is just what I need to get done. And probably the other part of that is one of my favorite sayings from my grandma on my dad's side was bite off more than you can chew and then chew like crazy. So I've always either had a bit of a side hustle when I was in corporate world or I was studying or something like that. And then I had, married with a child. And I think when you've got a lot going on, you really have to be clean about what you're putting your effort into. And so I wouldn't say I didn't work hard, but I'd say I worked in a very focused way.
There's a number of things I'm picking up there, Donna. So focus came through a number of times. You said that number of times. I'm hearing the element of prioritization and understanding what's most important, but also what needs to happen first. There was some level of sequentiality of what you were saying there that you seem to be able to sift and go, okay, for me to be able to finish all of this by the end of the day, because I'm on annual leave tomorrow, great mindset, I need to be able to get this done. So to get this done, I need to be able to do A, B, C, some kind of element of sequential nature to this. And this mindset of I'm going on leave tomorrow is really interesting. And all under the umbrella is you're still having fun.
Yeah, look, I think the other aspect, and I don't know whether this is a learned or natural skill either, but I'm pretty good at figuring out exactly that. What's the order of things that need to get done and what's the best, I didn't realize I was doing this at the time, but what's the best time of day to do certain things? So I was always, the first couple of hours, which is why I probably wrote the book the first 2 hours. In fact, I know it's why I wrote the book the first 2 hours, is because I was really good at protecting that morning. Even before, meetings have been around for a really long time, but I've been in the workforce long enough to remember a time when it didn't seem to be the bugbear that it is now. But even back then, I was pretty good at, getting in and focusing on my first 2 hours, which meant that I got, to use Stephen Covey's phrases, my big rocks done first, allowing me to have the room to adapt or react or to what people needed later in the day. So I think that was a big help. It's not so much, yes, it's prioritizing, but also thinking what's the best use of my time right now to get, whatever needs to be done right now.
Yeah, I'm hearing an element there. I'm the same, by the way, and it took me a long time to work it out about the early in the morning is my peak time for anything creative, anything deeper, etc. It took me a long time to learn that as well. But the other thing I'm hearing is there was a lot of movement in the 80s, 90s around this term just-in-time management and all this kind of stuff. But I'm hearing something interesting for you. And you spoke about the rocks, you hear things like about swallow the frog first in the morning, etc. But what I'm hearing is the interesting part, because then when you've got those big rocks out of the way, then if life throws you a curveball, you're not going to panic. You're not going to panic. If you leave everything to the last moment and then the curveball comes, then what are you going to do? You're stuck. How does that sit with you?
Yeah, I think that's one of the interesting aspects of this. And I think that's where a lot of people get caught up, particularly if they allow email to be the driver of what they do every day. So, for example, most people come in, sit and look at their email, and then that determines their priorities. It's extremely reactive from the moment they sit down at their desk. Whereas if they've decided the day before, the most important things I need to get done tomorrow, if I've got nothing else done tomorrow, these are the most important things. You get them done early. You're absolutely right. You can't look. Cruising is the wrong word. No one ever describes, how was your day, dear? I cruised. No one ever says that. But you don't have that same level of pressure. It's a different pressure because it could be very reactive, but you don't, at least you can go, well, at least I got that stuff done. So, yeah, that's kind of how it plays out.
The question that popped into my mind when you were saying that, Donna, was, am I busy being busy or am I busy being productive? And if I'm sitting there letting my email dictate my priorities, I'm not being productive. I'm just being busy. If I'm intentional about, here are my 3 things that must be done by the end of today, now I'm going to be productive. How does that sit with you?
Yeah, I'd even go so far as saying, here are the 3 things I want to try and get done before midday even, right? So, really protecting that time really well so that, and again, in a world of where we are driven by email and we're driven by meetings, we spend most of our time in a state of busyness. And, it's something that I've tried to work on myself over the past few years is when someone says, how's work? In fact, people have always said as a badge of honor, so how's work? Is it busy? They're expecting you to get yes. Like that, for some reason, that makes me important in some way if my work is busy. And I've been trying to avoid that. So I'll say things like, oh, yeah, it's been pretty constant. Or, yeah, had a really productive day today. Or, things were a little slow today, which meant I could get some great creative work done that I'd been waiting for some space for. Or, has it been busy? No, today I protected the whole day because I needed to write 3 or 4 articles. So, it's just thinking differently about what busy means. In fact, I actually think busy, without wanting to upset your listeners, because we've only just met, busy is the new lazy, right? So, if I'm allowing the busyness of the world that, I'm just going with that flow rather than, being very, the word you used, very conscious, deliberate, intentional. That's the word. Yeah. Intentional. Then really I'm kind of just sitting back. And that is cruising, right? Just sitting back and letting it happen rather than, taking control.
I love this. I'm going to bottle that one. Busy is the new lazy. And what I'm once again picturing is these people that are letting their emails dictate their day instead of taking the time to go, hang on a second, what is most important today? What is most important today? And am I putting my efforts to that or am I sitting there punching emails out? Love it. Love it, Donna. All right. Let's get into the book series a little bit. It's about time. Love the play on words. And let's talk about the first 2 hours. So tell me about your first 2 hour ritual.
So the idea is that we're paying attention to the clock in our body, not the one on the wall. And so I don't want to kind of go down an existential philosophical discussion around the artificial construct that is a clock and time, the way that's put together. But really, our body and our brain is designed to do certain things at certain times of the day. So about 80% of us have what we would call an early bird or moderate clock, which says that we get up sometime between, 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. and we go to bed sometime between, say, 9 p.m. and about 11 p.m. And the idea is that we're most supposed to go to bed when the sun goes down and wake up when the sun comes up. That's how we're constructed. And along with that comes a circadian rhythm, a rhythm that works around certain times of the day. It's everything from blood pressure to body temperature. But the thing that I find most interesting is that we have highest levels of mental alertness in the first 2 hours after waking. So at work, So if we wake up at 7, our best 2 hours are then from 9 till 11, right? That's kind of how it works. So the earlier you rise, then the earlier your most alertness happens. And it lasts for about, it's not just 2 hours, it lasts for somewhere between 2 and 4 hours. So through to the morning, we have high levels of mental alertness. And so that's why I wrote the book, because I actually think we waste that time and we waste it in email. We come in the morning and we turn on our email and we get immediately drowning in the minutiae of the day, the 90% of emails that just waste our time. And before we know it, it's lunchtime. And then we're starting that slump that naturally happens after lunch. And then we try to do hard thinking because we're running out of time now. So now we've got to actually make some decisions and do some hard thinking because I've got to get it done before the end of the day. And that's where we make mistakes, poor decisions, end up having to repeat things because our brain isn't switched on at that time. At that time of day, our brain and body is good for repetitive, well, first of all, digesting food and repetitive tasks, stuff where you don't have to have your brain power switched on. So more maybe physical dexterity, which doesn't always translate into the corporate world, but it's the things that are repetitive, non-thinking, routine in nature. And so I didn't realize I did that naturally for a long time. And then I started investigating, when people said, how do I work and tell them, I started to kind of research and see whether it was a thing. Turns out it totally is a thing.
I love it. I love the fact that we're, paying attention to our physiology, paying attention to our body, and then getting intentional with that. I am absolutely resonating with what you're saying. So I'm an early riser and I know I'm very creative and very productive in the morning. I know that I'm not creative in the afternoon and I am better off doing far more routine tasks in the afternoon for sure. The temptation. This is what I need a tip on. This is private coaching and we're just hitting record. The temptation to open that email in the morning to see if there was something urgent, but just that process of doing that, all of a sudden I'm looking at 100 emails. How do I avoid the temptation or reverse that? How do I look at my email and go, oh, bang, there's one there that needs my attention, the rest can wait?
Okay, so gosh, I have a lot to say about this. So you're looking for a tip or a hack that I'm going to say, hey, just do this and you'll be fine. It's actually not that easy. So I'm what's called a zero inboxer. And so at the end of every day, I'm lucky. So I won't look now, but right now I've probably got 2 emails sitting in my inbox because they arrived in the last couple of hours before you and I started recording this episode. And so I haven't looked at them. I just glanced when I came in to get our Zoom link together, but I saw 2 messages sitting there. So I know that tomorrow morning when I get in, I'm going to have at least 2 emails sitting in there. When you're a zero inboxer and you might only get, now, depends on how, the nature of your work. If you're in a global organization, you could have 100 emails come in overnight, depending on where you work. But the idea is that you can scan them very quickly. So the tip is you go in and you just scan and you look for that one that goes, and urgent is, the word urgency gets thrown around a lot these days, right? So you've really got to be a bit careful about how you fall into that trap. But what I'm looking for is there something there that people need something from me to continue doing their work? And that if I waited 2 hours to respond to that, I could be holding them up. So that's kind of the measure I use. I quickly scan down. So, I might get a message from Mick saying, hey, we're just about to go live with the podcast episode. We realize we desperately need a photo of you. I'm like, okay, I can shoot that off. I'll respond to that quickly because I know it might hold up you and your team, right? So I just scan for that. But I'm going to tell you, they're rare. And seriously, we fall into this trap of everything has to be done now. And it's just not true. So there is an aspect of discipline around this. So if you're a zero inboxer and all you're doing is scanning what came in overnight, that'll take you 5 minutes just to respond to the one potential message that might need an instant response. The rest can wait. If you're not a zero inboxer and you've got, thousands of emails sitting in your inbox, you've got a little bit of work to do. You've got to be able to just scan to the point where the last one came in, right? So it's a little harder. And I'm also going to say you're going to have to figure out how to manage. And by figure out, I can help you do that. But it's like, how do I get rid of all those thousands of emails in my inbox? You really just want to be working with since I looked at it last, what's come in since then. That's the real trick. Just scan that.
All right. Really good tips, Donna. So far, we've focused on our first 2 hours. The next book's really intriguing. We do have our time completely sponged up by these things. What the heck is a 25-minute meeting? How do you do that?
It's a lifesaver. Just let me tell you. So I reckon if I said to any of your listeners, how do you feel when a meeting gets cancelled? They'd probably be putting a big smile on their face and doing a little happy dance and feeling relieved and awesome about that. So That's a funny thing about meetings. Somehow our calendars end up full of them, but gee, we'd love just to get rid of the lot, right? So it's a really interesting conundrum we've got ourselves into. So I started researching the optimal amount of time that people can focus before they need a break or before they begin to get distracted. So that was kind of the start of this. Like, the meetings really have to be an hour, which is what the default has been for a really long time. And what would happen if we did them in 25 minutes? So I've been doing 25-minute meetings long before I wrote the book, or half hours. Let's go with half hours. So it may have not always been 25 minutes, and I had some things that I would do that were very clear about how I would make sure that we would get through the meeting. So again, still friendly. Hi, how you going? How's the dog? I hear you just had a vacation. Awesome. And then I would say, okay, by the end of this meeting, it would be great if we've made a decision, understood next steps, agreed the budget, got to the bottom of a problem. And so I'd state straight away the outcome for the meeting. Yes, good. We agree. Great. And then we would go through the process of having our meeting. And I very rarely does a meeting have to go on for more than 25 minutes when we're super clear on the purpose or the outcome that we're looking for. And that's actually the biggest tip I'll give any of you people right now who are listening. If you, from now on and for the rest of your life, every meeting that you book, if you put that sentence in the meeting request, by the end of this meeting, it would be great if, and finish that sentence, your lives will change. So fortunately for me, Francesco Cirillo, who wrote the book, did the Pomodoro method. He did all the research around optimal times for focus, and it was 25 minutes. And so usually I can say, can you leave your phone? Can you leave your laptop? Can you leave all that out? And we just focus. We get through so much more when we don't have those distractions. So there's a couple of elements at play in 25-minute meetings.
Love it. So I love the fact that it's focused on where our maximum productivity and creativity is before we start getting distracted and our mind drifts off, et cetera, et cetera. Having a clear focus on the meeting and being able to go, okay, that's what we need to. Two things I want to check. The first one is what happens in that meeting when someone brings up something that's not on the topic. It might be slightly adjacent or it might be far removed from the objective of the meeting. How do you handle that?
So I interrupt. So if I can wait till they draw breath, I'll sometimes do a signal, which is like the timeout signal. And usually most people, when you do something like that, politely with a smile on my face, like I'm not trying to be rude or obnoxious or anything like that. And I've done it with the most senior of people in organizations. And look, I might be very lucky because I can be a bit cheeky and get away with that stuff. But I'll just go, hey, just hang on a second, Bob. Just want to remind you that the purpose of today was to get to this. I want to check with the rest of the people around here. Bob's taken us down a slightly different path right now. Are we happy to continue going there or do we want to come back to this? And so in that moment, I'm recontracting because we contracted to do the outcome. But if where Bob's going is where everyone wants to go, then, okay, we'll go there. But if everyone says, well, actually, Bob, can we take that offline and let's get back to what we're doing here? Okay, so I always have a background as a facilitator. And most managers and leaders I speak to in organizations don't have that identity as part of how they operate. But I've got to tell you, it's a useful skill to have. And it doesn't mean you've got to stand up in front of hundreds of people and facilitate stuff. It just simply means you, to draw on the earlier conversation, notice what's going on in the room. Notice that we have deviated. Take the opportunity to bring it back on track or at least to re-contract with the people in the room and then make the decision about what we're going to do next. And that you don't have to be a professional facilitator to do that. You've just got to know that there's some simple steps you can follow to bring it back.
Yeah, there's an element there of discipline and focus. Again, I really, really like it, Don. I'm going to go to the other extreme now and talk about, Parkinson's law tells us that the work expands to fill the time that it's afforded. What in that 25-minute meeting, and what I'm about to say, I borrowed a little bit from Patrick Tian, by the way, a previous guest on the show. So hi, Patrick. I hope you're well. If you've achieved the objective in 15 minutes, do we stop?
Yes. I don't know whether you want me to expand on that answer.
I do. Yeah. No, I will, but I'll sharpen the question a little bit. Why don't we stop? Let's reverse it, because I can tell you that most companies, if there's a 25-minute meeting, people meet for the 25 minutes, even if the objective was achieved in 18 minutes. Why don't we stop?
Look, I don't know, because let me ponder this for a bit, because I have a story of my own where I was running 25-minute meetings for a while. And even when someone would book an hour, I'd still get it done in 25 minutes because I used my own methodology around that, keeping things sharp and focused. And I did have someone say to me once, okay, we've now got a whole extra 35 minutes. What should we fill the time with? And I said, well, I don't know what you're going to fill the time with, but I'm out of here. And so I just left. I do find it a bit of a conundrum. But I think if we state up front, by the end of this meeting, it would be great if we've done X, Y, Z. Then we can say at the 18-minute point, well, it seems to me we've done X, Y, Z, meeting's adjourned. I think the reason it lingers on is because we're not as clear about what our outcome is. And when we're really clear on that, there's no need to linger. So we can just say, hey, we agreed this? Yes. All right. Gift of time. Off you go.
All right. Next one. Get to the end of the 25 minutes and we haven't achieved by the end of the meeting. Wouldn't it be great if? What do we do now? So we're at the 25-minute meeting mark. And by the way, where I'm going with this is also what happens in so many businesses is that the first meeting of the day overruns. The second meeting starts late. The third meeting starts later. You know where I'm going with this. How do we have that discipline?
Well, one of the things I say in the book is 25-minute meetings, the actual number of 25 minutes and the ability to focus and get work done harks back to, the late 19th century time in motion studies by Frederick Winslow Taylor. And he discovered that when you go hard for 25 minutes and then break for 35 minutes, you get piles more work done. There's some interesting studies around that. So I'm not suggesting that we just only work for 25 minutes and then goof off for 35. But what I was suggesting in the book was it's not just I do a 25-minute meeting, have a 5-minute break and then another 25-minute and a 5-minute break. And I just do, instead of having 8 back-to-back meetings, now I've got 16. That was never the intention. It was to halve the time and have more impactful meetings, which does give you, if you're doing it right, you've got a 35-minute buffer till the next. And so if you've done it that way, then if it runs over a bit, it doesn't matter. But what I would say is, I think most people would have an instinct around how long things might take. So you might book like an hour meeting, but I'd be having a break at the 25-minute meeting point. You'll be much more productive if you do. And again, I hate using the word discipline because so many people don't like it that much. So intentional is much better, I think. We just have to be intentional that we're consciously making decisions to do our meetings better. And are they overrunning because we've let people just ramble? Or are they overrunning because this is a hot topic and we do need to speak for longer on it? And if it's the latter, my suspicion is people would be okay to say, hey, let me just take a moment to cancel my next meeting because I think we need to continue this conversation. We're getting a lot of value out of it.
Yeah, really good. So intentionality is coming back again. 2 other things popped into my head when you were talking through that. One is the energy management. How do we do our energy? Because we're not running a marathon every day. We can do these in shorter sprints, right? Each meeting is a 5K, not a, running and running and running all day. And then what comes is diminishing returns. So if that 25 meeting has become 45 minutes, have you really achieved anything in the extra 20 minutes or did your productivity actually just drop off and it didn't mean anything?
Look, I'm not sure necessarily because it's always going to depend on the people and the content and all of that stuff. But I think I'd be paying close attention to, what time did we start? Were we disciplined about that? Did we have the purpose clearly aligned? Did people know ahead of time? Were they given sufficient time to prepare? The biggest mistake I see in organisations is that they come in and someone then immediately starts reading a PowerPoint slide deck out to the participants of the meeting, which uses up a massive chunk of time before we get to the chance to really discuss what's the question that we're talking. Thank you for all of that information and what is it we're meant to be talking about. And so I think if we've sent the deck out beforehand, if we're clear on what we're wanting them to talk about when they come in, by the end of this meeting, we'll have made a decision based on the inputs of each of the participants and we structure the meeting effectively, then I think, we're not going to do a 10-year strategic plan in 25 minutes, but most of our BAU stuff, I think we get a bit lazy and it's, a bit chicken and egg. Where do we draw the line, right? Because right now, most people are in back-to-back meetings. They haven't even got time to think about how they run the meetings. They haven't got time to prepare. They're literally running from one meeting to the other. And the reason why people read out slide decks in meetings is because no one will have had a chance to do the pre-work anyway. And so it's really about, a line in the sand has to happen around, I want to have more time to prepare. I want to prepare people better for the meetings that I do. And so, look, and just on that, if you're waiting for the culture of your organisation to change around this, don't. This is one of these things that I know it bugs CEOs, but they're not waiting up at night thinking about how can I change the culture of my organisation around meetings. you actually don't need permission from anyone to begin to improve your meetings, right? You can begin to make small changes and run them better without having to have a big cultural change or HR to drive some massive initiative.
Yeah, get going. I love it. All right, so what I'm hearing, intentional, clarity of purpose, focus. 25-minute meetings and then get out of there. 35-minute buffer if you need it. It's going to help you prepare for the next meeting in any case. So intentional, clarity, focus. 25 meetings, get out of there. Love it, Donna. All right, now next question. What the heck is a one-day refund?
Well, who knew, right? So this was inspired during the pandemic when I was living in Victoria. And if anyone's listening, no matter where you were in the world, Victoria made big news around the world because we had some of the harshest lockdowns during 2020 and 2021. And I started to ask people about, what their habits were while they were in lockdown. So for most people living, say, in Melbourne, the average commute was about an hour door to door, and which gave them 2 hours every day, which over 5 days meant that they got 10 hours back that they normally wouldn't have had if they were having to commute to the office. And I asked people, what did you do with that time? And, no one said, I exercise well. Because if I say to people, what would you do if you had an extra day in your week? They say, I'd exercise, spend time with my kids, go out and enjoy great meals, read books, my hobby, get in the garden, rebuild motorcycles in my garage, whatever they'd love to do. But when I said, what did you do during those COVID times with that extra time? They just subsumed it into their work. And so that got me interested in how much time we need at work, how much effort do we need to put in, and is it possible to pare back the equivalent of about 8 hours a week, using some specific techniques. So that's where that one came from. And who knew that I was writing a book that would become nearly a handbook for how to do a 4-day work week, which is the current trend, right? Who knew?
There we go. So that's where I was going to go with that. Tell us more. Tell us more about how I'm going to say reframe this and get comfortable with it.
Yeah. So look, we waste a lot of time in meetings, so that the levers we want to pull are all related to my previous books. We need to do our meetings better. And if we get sharper around that, we can pull back time. We need to think about the clock in our body, not the one on the wall, and we can work better at certain times of day, and we can be more efficient about what we get done. But the other thing that I found was very interesting is this notion that being 100% on 100% of the time seems to be the norm. And, you mentioned it earlier, the back-to-back meetings, the constant email, the feeling like we're on the whole time. I don't quite know where that started. I'm going to say somewhere in the Industrial Revolution and maybe up to 40, 50 years ago, maybe, when lots of studies have shown that when we are on at about 85%, whether that's, the use of energy or how much time we leave in our diary, like we leave a 15% buffer in our diary, when we make space that allows us to recharge, we actually get more done because we're able to engage the parts of our brain better that don't end up being dulled by overloads of cortisol and adrenaline because we're this constant state of frenzied activity. When we stop and rest and relax, we're able to solve more complex problems easier and more efficiently.
So the stats around the 4-day week is playing this out as well, Donna. And it's interesting because I think that all of us somehow know this. Like we know that if we jumped on a treadmill and went, right, run as hard as you can for as long as you can, we all know that not too long actually for some of us, that after a period of time, we've slowed down dramatically. And yet we get into the workplace and expect people to be at peak performance for an 8-hour day, a 10-hour day, 12-hour day. And it's just not realistic. It's just not realistic.
Well, no, and I would say peak performance is 85%. So, said no one ever in a performance review. So how much effort have you put in this year, Mick? Oh, I've done 85%. So they're expecting you to say 110%, boss. I'm going hard all of the time. And this, some of the research shows that this hustle culture came around in the kind of 80s and 90s when recessions were all the rage and people were worried about jobs and having to have second and third jobs to make things happen. And so we got into the habit of even seeing downtime as wasted, and that boredom was something to avoid. Daydreaming, and how many times do we get in trouble as kids at school for daydreaming, when actually more current research is showing that it's critical for our creativity, problem solving, for the parts of our brain that separate us from the man from Beast kind of stuff. It's absolutely necessary to have those restful periods in our day to function at a high level.
All right, love it, Don. I'm going to bring all of those together for a moment and then switch to your new book for a while. So the call to action, everyone listening at home, have a listen to what Donna's saying and think about what you can do to implement some of this. Think about the first 2 hours. Are you intentionally architecting your day where you're doing your most creative, important work in those first 2 hours? Yes or no? And what are you going to do about it if you're not? Are your meetings productive? Are they intentional? Do they have a clear purpose? Are you staying focused on that purpose? And can you create this 25-minute meeting where you'll find that if everyone's sharp on that focus, you can do it? And then the third one, how are you going to get intentional about your week? Think about your week. How are you going to architect your week? How are you going to give yourself a one-day refund in whatever format that takes to think about your energy management, to think about what peak performance looks like over a week, not over a minute, not over 1 hour. What does peak performance look like for you over a week, including enough time for rest so that you can be at your very best when you need to be at your very best? So that's your 3 call to actions here. And thank you, Donna, for sharing these with us. Now I'm curious. We all know it's around. I think most of us have tinkered. Some of us are experts. Others have tinkered. ChatGPT. How can that rescue our time?
Can I tell you, there's been a study out of Stanford University that says that when a human works with ChatGPT, you can get up to 37% productivity gains. And so if I'd have known that when I was writing the one-day refund, I'd have had whole chapters on GPT, because the idea is you actually can literally get a day back if you're beginning to use ChatGPT to augment your work. So I started playing around with it in January this year. I'd heard about it. It kind of came out publicly at around October, November last year. Then in January, I thought, well, given that I'm a so-called authority in productivity, I better have a look at this thing. Set aside a couple of hours. Well, within 5 minutes, I'm on the phone to my sister saying, you've got to get onto this. I'm telling my dad, I'm telling everyone I know, this is the best thing since sliced bread. It just, some people argue that it could make us dumber. But I think what I've been finding is it is sparking for me my creativity. So when I get stuck, so we've all had situations, I've received an email, I don't quite know how to respond. And so I might agonize over that for a while. I might do 10 cracks at trying to send it and I keep deleting. So now I go to ChatGPT, or Charlie, as I like to call it, and say, hey, this is the email I've got, or this is the gist of the email, if I don't want to put personal information on there, and say, I'm really struggling for a response that's assertive in my position, but still empathetic enough to maintain the relationship. And boom, I get this awesome email. Or any copy that I have to do, like if I'm writing, proposals or copy for websites or social media or whatever, any written communication. So the thing that I have found is that anytime I'm stuck, I go straight to Charlie and say, hey, what do you reckon? And I'd say 80% of the time, I get a pretty good response.
It's really cool, Donna. The things that were resonating with me as you were talking, firstly is the word augment. So you use the word augment. You didn't say replace. You didn't say anything like that. So there's a lot of people out there fearing, going, my job is going to be replaced by AI. My job is going to be replaced by ChatGPT. First of all, I think there's studies that show that kids that are graduating school this year, 65% of them end up doing jobs that haven't even been invented yet. So the world evolves, the world adapts. So that fear is a little bit unfounded. But the second, it's augmenting. It's augmenting the human condition. It's not replacing the human condition. And then what I'm hearing from you when I hear you talk, digital spark, digital brainstorming. You've got this tool that you can go, I've got this thought about topic X. And it helps you build on ideas, bouncing ideas off ChatGPT. And then the third is you're still the ultimate decision maker. The choice is yours. You can take the response and build with it. You can take and go, okay, that one didn't quite work for me, and try again. You're still the decision maker. How does that sit with you?
Yeah, totally. So much in there. So I tend to think of Charlie as my eager intern, like really eager to please, and occasionally has a hangover. So I've got to check their work. So for the most part, eager to please, anything I ask, it'll find an answer for me. I sometimes still have to go to Google. Google is more accurate, but ChatGPT will get there once the full integrations with internet and all that sort of stuff happens, which they've been dipping in and out of over the last kind of 6 months. They had a go and then they pulled it back and they're having another go again at the moment. So once all of that accuracy stuff gets cleaned up, then it really is. It's everyone now at work has an assistant that they can say, here's some of the stuff that I'm finding challenging. Can you go away and do a first draft of it? Can you go away and do a bit of research for me? Can you go and find out who's talking about this right now? So I want to talk about, I don't know, burnout in the workplace. Who's already talking about it and what are they saying? So I can, be part of that conversation or incorporate some of that stuff. So if anyone's wondering, just in case they're wondering, did I use ChatGPT to help me write the book about ChatGPT? The answer is yes. It augmented, to use the word you like, my thinking. So I'd be sitting there and saying, I know I want to say these 2 points, but my publisher always likes the rule of threes. So I'd say, here's the first 2 points. Can you give me 5 examples of what could be a good third point? And then I'd go and say, that's cool. And sometimes I'd mix them together, or sometimes I'd lift one and go, yep, that will work. But, if anyone does read the book, I think you'll find it's very much got a human feel, because I did write the book. I just got Charlie to help me out when I got stuck.
Brilliant. I absolutely love this, Donna. Thank you so much for sharing so much wisdom and insights today. So the 4 things we've got. So we're going to think about our first 2 hours. We're going to look at 25-minute meetings. We're going to think about architecting our week to get a 1-day refund and manage our energy. And now we're going to play around with ChatGPT and see if it can augment our existence, not replace our existence. Thank you so much, Donna. Lots of nuggets of gold here. And if you're listening to this on the way to work, on the tram, whatever the case may be, have a think about what you can try first. Don't have to do it all at once. Just try one of the things that Donna has tried first. See if it sits with you, see how the glove fits, and then I'm sure you're going to get benefit from it. Then you can try the next one. So one habit at a time, listen to what Donna's saying, and I think we can all learn from that. Thank you so much, Donna. I want to now take us to our rapid round. These are our last 4 questions we ask all of our guests. So firstly, what's the one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were 20?
That all good things come eventually. You don't have to be in so much of a hurry. Just slow down and let things happen as they're meant to happen.
Yeah, good one. Oh, I love it. All right. What's your favourite book?
Okay, I don't have a favourite of all time, apart from my own. But my current favourite book that I'm referring to a lot is The 4,000 Weeks. Is it called? Just called 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman. The idea is that we're on average on the planet for about 4,000 weeks and how you're using that time. Fascinating.
Oh, that's a little scary. You've just made me face my own mortality. Oh.
Well, that's the idea of the book. So, then I've done, and he's done his job and I've done my job.
There we go. All right. What's your favourite quote?
Comes from David Allen, another authority in productivity, which is the human mind is for having ideas, not storing them, which means we've got to clear out junk from our brain, stop trying to remember stuff, write stuff down, get it out of your head so that you're clearing up space to do great thinking.
Yeah, nice. It's a little bit like, I'm going to use a computer analogy here and say that if your RAM is clogged with useless information that you don't need right now, your computer's going to slow down. Yeah, I really like this. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it actually came from Einstein, who was some student tried to gotcha him one day in a lecture and said, what's the formula for blah, 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 blah. And Einstein said, I don't know. And the student was like, thought you meant to be the smartest man on the planet. And he said, why would I remember such things that I can look up in a book? So that's kind of where the thinking has come from as well. It's awesome.
Yeah, really cool. All right, very good. And finally, Donna, there's going to be people that are enthralled by your ideas, your books, your services. How do people find you?
Best way is donnamcgeorge.com. I'm also on all good social media platforms. I'm a shameless self-promoter. You won't be able to open a social platform without finding me, probably. But the easiest is donnamcgeorge.com.
All right, brilliant. And we'll put the link in the show notes as well, Donna. This has been such a pleasure. I love your energy. I love your passion. I love everything about the tips that you've given us today. So thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, and your insights.
Thanks for having me, Mick. It was a great pleasure.
You've been listening to The Leadership Project. Join us in our next episode as we're joined by CEO of Fit Body Boot Camps, Bryce Henson. Bryce shares his own inspirational life story of how he has used stoicism to bounce back from adversity and to become the successful leader he is today. Thank you for listening to The Leadership Project at mixbeers.com. A huge call out to Faris Sadek for his video editing of all of our video content, and to all of the team at TLP. Joanne Goes On, Gerald Calabo, and my amazing wife, Say Spears. I could not do this show without you. Don't forget to subscribe to the Leadership Project YouTube channel, where we bring you interesting videos each and every week. And you can follow us on social, particularly on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Now, in the meantime, please do take care, look out for each other, and join us on this journey as we learn together and lead together.